Welcome back to the IT training series produced by Common Sense Security and Lincoln Christian Institute. My name is Mark Haupt and I am your host. Today we are going to talk about interactive online learning. And if you have not already listened to the first piece of this two-part series on how to use the book and how to use the tools to learn and study, I recommend you go back to the most previous podcast, episode 4, and listen to that first, and then come back and listen to this, episode 5, Interactive Online Learning. Welcome again to the Interactive Online Learning episode 5, which is the second part of how to use the book during the training process. Again, my name is Mark Haupt and I am your host with Common Sense Security and Lincoln Christian Institute. All right, let's take a look at interactive online learning. This will be a little bit of a shorter piece because the book offers you an opportunity not only to utilize what's in the book, but also online learning functions that are provided by the book producer called Cybex. And what you'll do with this is you're given inside of your book a website to go to where you can log in and create a login function where it has sample tests, flashcards, and other study tools. All right, so let's identify all three of those real quick. So first of all, the sample tests are much more expanded opportunities for you to begin the testing prep process than what is available at the back of each chapter of the book. So if you remember from my How to Use the Book episode 4, which was the first part of this, I talked about there's 20 review questions on the backside of every single chapter as you go through that book. And then there's the answers in Appendix B. Well, the sample tests that are provided in the interactive online learning are actual simulated tests for the actual ITF Plus process. So they aren't just 20 questions, for example, they're 100 questions, 150, and even 200 questions so you can get an idea of where you actually stand on the testing process instead of chapter by chapter, the overarching piece. All right. So I don't recommend that you start using that sampling test until we're at least halfway or even 3/4 of the way through the book, because what you're going to find is that the sampling test will be frustrating because your scores will probably be subpar. Let's wait until you get farther in, you get some learning, get some foundation on that first. So again, sample tests are 100 to 200 questions. They are timed. They give you an opportunity to see the language of the test that actually would occur if you went into a testing facility. If you want to know what it's like to go into that testing facility, episode 3 is the one that talks about that. But do keep in mind that the sample tests that are provided, although the questions are written very much like the real test, the questions themselves are not the test questions. It is not appropriate or ethical, if you will, to come out of a test and immediately copy that answer or that test question down and then place that into a sample test or a book like what we have here. So they're simulated or like questions, not identical questions, but they do give you the feel for what you're looking at. They are all multiple choice. Sometimes, like I used an example of one from the book here during my previous podcast about you have to select 3 out of 5 of the answers, okay? But typically they're going to be select 1, select the best answer. All right, in any of these testing type of scenarios, unless it says select 3 out of 5, you're selecting one answer, and usually only 2 of the 4 answers are even remotely possible. And so you have to look at how the question is worded and make sure you tie that closely with the answers or with the question and the answer that are there. All right. The other thing that the interactive online learning function gives you are flashcards. And typically these are flashcards so that you can learn terms. Now, a lot of these terms are in existence already in the beginning of each chapter under the objectives. So chapter 1, for example, has some objectives of understanding what input and output are, understanding what TB and MB and GB stand for. In other words, terabyte, gigabyte, and megabyte. Maybe, for example, another one might be RAM, understanding that that's an acronym for random access memory, and then understanding what random access memory is and how it impacts with the computer. So these flashcards will be utilized for that. So Then there's some other study tools in there as well, so such as exercises and perhaps moving things around on the screen, identifying certain sections of the motherboard, and so on and so forth. So the next big question is, how do you use this interactive online learning? Obviously, you will log into the website, so you need the internet to get into it. But once you're in there, what I recommend you do is I recommend that you go through the flashcards and you go through the other study materials or the other study tools that are available to you first, and get used to those samples, if you will, that are provided. And then again, once you're done with about, I would say no less than half, but certainly probably closer to 3/4 or maybe even 90% of the book, then you move on to conducting this sample tests and kind of see where you're at. Typically on a sample test, if you're not scoring 90% or greater, you are not ready for the real test. I would expect that most of you, even after going through 3/4 or even 100% of the book, will probably score somewhere in between 60 and 70% on the tests. Because what the tests will do is it'll identify where you need to go and study more. So the test will present you an output that shows where you're weak, and it'll show you exactly where you need to go into the book and do more study. So when you get a sample test like that, show me what the sample test is, and I can help you do an analysis on that test and allow you to understand that test a little bit better and the results of it. All right. Well, thank you for joining me on this interactive online learning, the second part of how to use the book. It's a little bit shorter this time because there's shorter subject matters to deal with. But again, this is all prep for July 3, when we actually launch the training in reality. So be ready. This is just stuff for you to listen to and learn. And then once you actually put it into practice later on, we'll go back over these items and make sure you have them. So don't worry if you didn't get it. Don't worry if you didn't take notes. This is just prep work out there. So have a great day. I am so glad you're a part of this process, and I look forward to helping you gain these certifications that we're going to go over. Talk to you later.